Hello, listeners. Have you ever wondered why we work the way we do? Or how the specific words we choose to describe our careers actually shape our professional reality? And with technology moving so fast, what will the ideal job even look like in 20 or 30 years?
I mean, those are just massive generation-defining questions.
Yeah, they really are.
And honestly, they are the exact questions professionals all over the world are grappling with right now. People are just trying to make sense of a landscape that is, shifting right beneath their feet.
Welcome to Everyday English Flow. Daily English practice, natural speaking, and effortless listening flow. Today, we are going to master exactly 8 fundamental themes of work and career. Before we dive into point number 1, know that mastering these 8 areas will give you the complete linguistic toolkit to discuss any workplace topic.
Right, because let's face the real problem here. Communicating complex, nuanced professional ideas in a second language can feel, well, entirely overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. Just navigating workplace jargon or trying to express your ambitions leaves learners feeling so lost.
Yeah, or disconnected. I mean, you might have a brilliant idea in a high-stakes corporate meeting or an academic seminar, but if you lack the precise terminology, that idea just gets lost in translation.
It's a very real barrier.
It is. The language of work is almost its own unique dialect, It requires a level of precision that goes way beyond basic conversational English.
So today, we are focusing on something incredibly practical, but also deeply philosophical. We are looking at how to master C1 level English vocabulary by exploring these critical issues.
Exactly. And my approach today isn't to just throw facts at you. We are going to explore some universal truths about the global workforce.
Right.
It is widely believed that work is a universal human experience, but the way we approach it, value it, and even suffer for it varies wildly depending on where you are.
And what language you use to define it.
For sure. By analyzing these global trends, we can understand not just the mechanics of advanced English, but the actual psychology of the modern professional.
So let's start right at the beginning of anyone's professional journey. Point number 1, right? The motivations behind why we choose the paths we do. I really want to look at the tension between what we dream of doing and the very real external pressures we face.
It is the ultimate human dilemma, isn't it?
Totally. We often talk about this as the battle between internal desires and external rewards.
Right. And when we talk about career choices at an advanced C1 level, we need to move beyond simple words like passion or money.
Yeah, those are a bit basic.
Exactly. The conceptual framework relies on understanding 2 distinct forces. The first is intrinsic motivation.
Intrinsic motivation.
Right. And the second often involves seeking something highly lucrative.
Okay, let's contextualize those. I like to think of intrinsic motivation as like an internal engine.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's the inherent machinery that makes a person tick.
Yeah.
If you are intrinsically motivated to paint or to code or to teach, you do it because the act itself provides fulfillment.
Right. You are driven by the process, not just the outcome.
Exactly.
That is an excellent way to frame it. So the phrase intrinsic motivation refers to engaging in a behavior because it is personally rewarding.
So doing it just for the sake of doing it.
Exactly. Performing an activity for its own sake rather than the desire for some external reward. And when you use this phrase in a professional or academic setting, you are signaling a deep psychological driver.
Can you give an example of how you'd use that in a sentence?
Sure. You might say in an interview, I am driven by intrinsic motivation. The challenge of solving complex logistical problems is what gets me out of bed in the morning, regardless of the quarterly bonuses.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds profoundly more sophisticated than simply saying, I like my job.
It really does. It shows a C1 level of self-awareness.
But then we have the external reward, right? The quarterly bonus you just mentioned.
The fuel for that engine.
Exactly, the fuel. And that brings us to the word lucrative. It's an adjective, Lucrative. But how does lucrative differ from just saying, well, a job pays well?
Precision is key here. Lucrative doesn't just mean a comfortable salary. It actually implies generating a great deal of profit or wealth.
Okay, so a lot of wealth.
Yeah, and it's often used to describe entire industries, business ventures, or specific, highly specialized career tracks.
Like what?
like corporate law, investment banking, or specialized neurosurgery. These are universally recognized as lucrative fields.
Right, okay.
So in a discussion about economic trends, you wouldn't just say the tech industry pays well. You would say the transition toward artificial intelligence has created highly lucrative opportunities for machine learning engineers.
That's a great example sentence. So we have the internal engine of intrinsic motivation and the high-octane fuel of a lucrative career.
Right.
But I want to push back a little on this cultural narrative we see all over the internet, especially in the West, which constantly preaches this idea of follow your passion and the money will follow.
Ah, yes. The classic advice.
Right. But finding that supposed sweet spot, like a UI/UX designer who gets to satisfy their creative intrinsic motivation while simultaneously enjoying a highly lucrative tech salary, isn't that just an incredible privilege?
That is a very fair question.
Like, is that a reality the global workforce actually shares?
You've hit on a major psychological and economic divide there. And the short answer is no, it is absolutely not a universal reality.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, the idea of prioritizing intrinsic motivation is heavily dependent on cultural and economic context.
How so?
Well, it is widely observed that in collectivist societies, places with deep historical roots emphasizing the group over the individual, like Japan or South Korea, there's immense pressure to pursue roles that are deemed prestigious by the community.
Prestigious meaning carrying a high level of respect, status, and societal approval.
Precisely. In many collectivist frameworks, your career isn't just about your personal fulfillment. It is deeply tied to family honor, societal duty, and providing a stable foundation for the extended family unit.
So it's about the group, not just you.
Exactly. Choosing a lucrative and prestigious career like medicine or civil engineering is a way of fulfilling that collective duty.
Wow. Okay.
So in these scenarios, the individual's intrinsic motivation often has to take a back seat. The cultural expectation is that you find your fulfillment through doing your duty, not necessarily through the daily tasks of the job itself.
Right. Now contrast that with the United States or the UK, where individualism is sort of the bedrock of the culture.
Yes, very different.
The narrative there is hyper-focused on self-actualization. You are almost viewed as a failure if you aren't intrinsically motivated by your work, even if it's highly lucrative.
It creates a totally unique kind of modern anxiety in individualistic cultures.
Yeah.
But you also have to factor in pure economic survival.
Oh, for sure.
Look at emerging economies or rapidly developing nations. The booming IT and engineering sectors in countries like India and Nigeria are prime examples.
Right. Huge sectors there.
Global trends show these are highly practical, lucrative choices that millions of young people are pursuing. But for a vast majority of professionals in these regions, the primary driving goal is securing a stable, profitable future for themselves and their families.
Especially in an environment that might lack strong social safety nets.
Exactly.
Right. Because if you are worried about baseline financial survival, sitting around pondering your intrinsic motivation is a luxury you simply cannot afford.
You take the lucrative path.
Or at least the stable path, because the alternative is poverty.
Exactly. The privilege of prioritizing intrinsic motivation usually only arrives after a baseline of financial security has been firmly established.
Which brings us to the next massive dilemma, and point number 2. Let's say you've made your choice. You have a job. Now, what actually keeps you in that job?
Right, the retention factor.
Yeah, we are talking about the constant tug of war between job satisfaction and job security. Do you want to feel intellectually stimulated and free every day, or do you just want the absolute guarantee that your paycheck will clear every single Friday, no matter what happens to the economy?
This is a debate that shapes entire national economies.
It really does.
And to articulate the struggle at a C1 level, we need to integrate concepts like autonomy, stability, and the reality of a monotonous routine.
Okay, let's break those down.
We also need to look at how priorities shift from when you first start out in a career versus when you are decades in.
Let's actually focus on that phrasal verb for a moment. Start out, it seems simple, but it carries specific weight in professional English.
It does, yeah. Start out means to begin a journey, specifically a career or a long-term endeavor.
So just the beginning.
Right, but the nuance is that it implies a state of vulnerability or a lack of established foundation.
Could you give us a C1 example sentence?
Sure, you might argue, when young professionals start out in the tech industry, they are often willing to trade job stability for the chance to work on innovative, high-risk projects.
Oh, that sets a temporal context. This is behavior typical of the beginning phase.
Exactly.
Because when you are just starting out, maybe you don't have a mortgage or kids or aging parents to care for, you can take a risk.
Right. You are lighter on responsibilities.
You can seek autonomy. But let's define autonomy in the workplace, because I don't just mean being a freelancer.
No, not just freelancing. In an organizational context, autonomy is the degree of freedom, independence, and discretion given to an employee to schedule their work and determine the procedures used to carry it out.
So basically, it's the opposite of micromanagement.
Yes, exactly. High autonomy correlates strongly with high job satisfaction.
What's a good example sentence for autonomy?
A strong C1 statement would be, the transition to remote work has inadvertently granted employees a level of autonomy that was previously unimaginable in traditional corporate structures.
I love that. But the flip side of demanding autonomy is that you might sacrifice stability. And stability is the holy grail for a massive portion of the global workforce.
It really is. Stability is the state of being secure, steady, and resistant to change or economic shocks.
It's knowing you're safe.
Yes. It is the guarantee that your role will exist tomorrow, next month, and next year. And here's where the psychological trade-off occurs.
Right.
Millions of people will willingly accept a highly monotonous job if it guarantees absolute stability.
Monotonous. It sounds like a flat line.
Yeah.
Monotone.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing over and over.
That is the exact origin of the word. A monotonous task is dull, tedious, repetitive, and entirely lacking in variety.
Like what kind of jobs?
Data entry, assembly line manufacturing, certain types of bureaucratic processing, these are often highly monotonous.
Can we hear it in a sentence?
You might analyze this by saying, while the administrative role was undeniably monotonous, the unparalleled stability it offered made it highly desirable during the economic recession.
That makes total sense, but let's ground this in reality. I was reading about a phenomenon in India that perfectly illustrates this desperation for stability.
Wow, the public sector jobs.
Yes. There are instances where literally millions of highly educated people, we are talking individuals with master's degrees and PhDs, apply for a few hundred entry-level public sector jobs.
It's incredible to see.
Jobs like railway attendants or municipal clerks. Jobs that are, frankly, monotonous and do not utilize their intrinsic motivation or their education. Why does that happen?
It is entirely driven by the pursuit of stability. In many developing economies, the private sector is incredibly volatile.
Right.
And social safety nets like robust unemployment insurance or universal health care are either weak or non-existent.
So there's no backup plan?
None. A government job, a public sector role, provides a guarantee against absolute ruin. It is a lifetime contract.
Wow.
That level of job security is paramount when the alternative is severe financial vulnerability.
But if we cross the globe and look at developed nations with strong social safety nets, say Sweden, Denmark, or Canada, the entire psychology of the workforce changes.
Dramatically. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the existence of government-provided safety nets radically alters an employee's tolerance for monotonous or unfulfilling work.
How so?
In countries with universal health care and generous unemployment benefits, workers are not terrified of starvation or medical bankruptcy if they lose their jobs.
So they don't have to cling to a job they hate just to survive. If you are enjoying this deep dive so far, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe.
Exactly. Because their baseline survival is decoupled from their employer, workers in these nations have the leverage to demand job satisfaction, autonomy, and a positive culture.
They can just walk away.
Right. They can walk away from a toxic or monotonous environment. This forces employers in those countries to actually compete on the quality of the workplace, not just the paycheck.
It's fascinating because it reveals that the way we view our careers isn't just about personal ambition.
Not at all.
It's heavily dictated by the macroeconomic policies of the country we happen to live in. But here's the irony that I want to explore for point number 3.
Let's hear it.
Even in those developed countries where job security is relatively high and autonomy is prized, we are seeing a massive global crisis involving another factor: the absolute inability to turn work off.
Ah, yes. You are transitioning perfectly into the modern balancing act, because securing a satisfying or stable job is only half the battle.
Right.
Surviving it is the other half. The struggle for work-life balance has become the defining characteristic of the 21st century professional experience.
It really has. It feels like globally people are working longer hours, and because of technology, we are constantly tethered to the office.
Yeah, the exhaustion is palpable.
And to discuss this effectively, we need to elevate our vocabulary beyond just saying, I'm tired or I work too much.
Exactly. To discuss this at a high level, we need to dissect concepts like burnout, fatigue, the enforcement of boundaries, and the shifting landscape of employee entitlements.
Okay, let's start with the distinction between being tired and experiencing burnout, because I think burnout gets thrown around casually a lot.
It does. People say, oh, I worked a long week, I'm burned out.
Right. But clinically and professionally, it means something much deeper, right? It's a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress.
Yes.
It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands.
That is an excellent definition. Burnout implies a systemic failure of the work environment, not just a temporary lack of sleep.
It's much more serious.
It is. It leads to cynicism, a detachment from the job, and a plummet in productivity.
Can we hear a C1 sentence for burnout?
A C1 level observation would be, the pervasive culture of presenteeism in the financial sector has led to an epidemic of burnout, resulting in unprecedented turnover rates among junior analysts.
Presenteeism, meaning the pressure to just be physically seen at your desk,
Yeah.
even if you aren't being productive.
Exactly.
Which inevitably leads to our next word, fatigue. But how do we distinguish fatigue from just needing a good night's sleep?
Well, fatigue is a profound, lingering exhaustion. It can be mental or physical, often resulting from prolonged stress or illness.
So it doesn't just go away after a nap.
No, not at all. In a professional context, chronic fatigue implies that the body and mind are failing to recover during off hours.
How would we use that formally?
You might state in a human resources report, the mandatory overtime policies have induced severe chronic fatigue across the manufacturing floor, directly correlating with a spike in workplace accidents.
Oh, so it points to a structural safety issue, not a personal feeling of the employee.
Precisely.
And the only defense mechanism the employee has against burnout and fatigue is the establishment of boundaries.
Right. In professional terminology, setting boundaries refers to establishing clear psychological and physical limits to protect your time, energy, and personal life from the demands of work.
But this is where technology acts as this massive double-edged sword.
It really does.
On one hand, technology gave us the autonomy we discussed earlier. You can work from a cafe in Paris or your living room in Tokyo.
The dream of remote work.
Exactly. But on the other hand, it has completely obliterated physical boundaries. The office is no longer a building you leave at 5 p.m.
No, the office is in your pocket.
It's vibrating at 9 p.m. on a Saturday.
That is the core of the always-on culture. And what is truly fascinating is how different cultures are responding to this technological encroachment on personal time.
Right.
Let's look at two extreme opposite reactions on the global stage: Japan and Scandinavia.
Well, Japan has a very specific and tragic history with overwork.
It does. Following World War II, Japan experienced an economic miracle, rapidly rebuilding its economy.
Yeah.
But this was fueled by a deeply ingrained corporate culture that demanded absolute loyalty and punishingly long hours.
Just constant work.
Yes. This cultural expectation became so extreme that it birthed a specific phenomenon known as karoshi.
Which literally translates to death from overwork.
Yes, it does. It involves sudden occupational mortality, often through heart attacks, strokes, or stress-induced starvation diets.
That is just awful.
It is. It's directly linked to a complete lack of boundaries and immense societal pressure to never stop working. It is the ultimate tragic manifestation of an environment where work entirely consumes the individual.
It is terrifying. And yet, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have Scandinavian countries. You look at Denmark or Iceland, and they are moving in a completely different direction regarding worker entitlements.
Yes, let's define entitlements in this context. It doesn't mean being spoiled.
Right, that's a common misconception.
An entitlement is a formal right to a benefit, usually specified by law or contract.
Like paid time off.
Exactly. For example, European workers generally have generous legal entitlements to paid leave, often 4 to 6 weeks annually.
Whereas in the U.S., paid leave is a perk, not a federal entitlement.
Right. And Scandinavia is taking these entitlements further. They are actively trialing 6-hour workdays.
The logic of that completely blows my mind because it challenges everything we learned from the Industrial Revolution.
How so?
Well, the traditional logic is more hours at the desk equals more output. But the Scandinavian trials are proving that wrong.
Yes, they are relying on data that shows the human brain cannot maintain high-level cognitive function for 8 to 10 hours straight.
It just taps out.
Exactly. By reducing the workday to 6 hours, they found that workers were more focused, experienced vastly less fatigue, and maintained or even increased overall productivity.
It is a fundamental rethinking of human efficiency.
And then you have France, which took a legislative approach to the technology problem with the right to disconnect law.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yes, implemented a few years ago, this law formally requires companies to establish hours when staff should not send or answer emails.
So it is a legal entitlement to ignore your boss outside of working hours.
Basically, yes.
I love that. It makes it illegal for your employer to expect an immediate reply on a Sunday afternoon. But I have to ask you, the listener, directly, how do you personally set boundaries?
It's tough.
When the law doesn't protect you, are you able to turn your phone off? Are smartphones actually making us freer because of remote work? Or are they just electronic leashes, tying us to our desks no matter where we are in the world?
That is a profound question about the reality of modern autonomy.
It absolutely is. And this friction between technology and our daily lives brings us to a much larger systemic shift, which is point number 4.
Technology's impact on employment itself.
Exactly. Technology isn't just changing how we work or when we work, it is rapidly changing if we work.
Which brings us to the technological revolution and the shifting workplace. We need to talk about automation and artificial intelligence.
There is a palpable anxiety in the air right now.
Oh, absolutely. The fear of massive job losses is constantly warring with the excitement of entirely new, innovative industries.
So to navigate this discussion with C1 proficiency, we need to master a specific phrasal verb, take over. We also need to deeply understand the concepts of displacement, upskilling, retraining, and innovation.
Let's start with takeover. It implies a transfer of power or control.
Right. To take over means to assume control of something or to replace someone or something in a specific role.
Historically, we talked about corporate takeovers.
Like one company buying another.
Right. But today, the anxiety is technological. A relevant example would be there is widespread apprehension across the logistics sector that autonomous, self-driving trucks will completely take over the role of long-haul freight drivers within the next 2 decades.
That's a great C1 sentence. And when a machine takes over a role, the human worker experiences displacement.
Yes, displacement. In an economic context, it refers to the involuntary job loss caused by structural changes in the economy, most notably automation and technological advancement.
It is a very clinical term for a very painful human experience.
It really is. You might analyze the trend by saying, the rapid deployment of generative AI in copywriting and graphic design is threatening unprecedented job displacement among white-collar creative professionals.
And that's the scary part, right? Historically, automation displaced blue-collar physical labor.
The robotic arm on the car assembly line?
Exactly. But now, it's coming for cognitive labor. It's coming for the people sitting at desks. So what is the survival mechanism? Buzzwords we hear constantly are upskill and retrain. Are they the same thing?
They are related, but distinct. Upskill refers to the process of teaching an employee additional advanced skills or learning them yourself to enhance your capabilities within your current career path.
So it is about keeping pace with change.
Right. For example, a traditional marketing manager must continuously upskill in data analytics to remain relevant in a digitally driven landscape. You are adding to your existing toolkit.
Whereas retraining implies a more drastic pivot.
Exactly. Retraining usually involves learning a completely new set of skills for a fundamentally different profession, often out of necessity due to displacement.
Like a total career change.
Yes. For instance, following the closure of the automotive plant, the state government invested heavily in retraining programs to transition displaced assembly workers into the solar panel installation industry.
So displacement is the pain, upskilling and retraining are the medicine. And all of this is driven by innovation.
Innovation being the introduction of new methods, ideas, or products. It is the engine of economic growth. And it's vital to remember that while innovation causes displacement, it simultaneously creates.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the anxiety over AI displacing workers is valid. But 20 years ago, jobs like social media manager, cloud computing architect, or AI ethics consultant literally did not exist.
They weren't even words we used together.
Exactly. Innovation destroys, but it also builds entirely new ecosystems.
And it also globalizes the talent pool in unprecedented ways. It is widely noted that platforms like Upwork or Fiverr have created a massive global arbitrage of talent.
Oh, explain that term, arbitrage. Because I was reading a fascinating case study about freelance developers in the Philippines.
Yes, perfect example.
They are highly skilled, intrinsically motivated, and they are bypassing their local lower-paying economies entirely by contracting directly with tech firms in Silicon Valley or London.
That is the arbitrage. Technology allows a company in a high-cost area to seamlessly integrate talent from a low-cost area.
That's a win-win, isn't it?
Well, it provides lucrative opportunities for the freelancer in the Philippines while providing cost savings for the firm in London.
Right.
However, it also means that a junior developer in London is now competing globally, not just locally.
Ah, I see.
The pressure to upskill is no longer just about beating the person at the desk next to you. It's about staying competitive on a planetary scale.
Which makes lifelong learning an absolute non-negotiable. I want to highlight a model I think is brilliant, Singapore's Skills Future Initiative. Have you looked into the mechanics of this?
It is a pioneering approach to national workforce development.
It really is. Instead of leaving upskilling entirely up to the individual or the corporation, the Singaporean government essentially treats lifelong learning as critical national infrastructure.
They actually fund it.
Yes. They provide citizens with monetary credits, subsidies, and a massive platform of courses to continuously develop new skills throughout their lives.
He's very smart.
They recognize that the education you receive at age 20 is mathematically incapable of sustaining your career until you are 65 in an era of rapid innovation.
It's a proactive policy designed to prevent mass displacement before it happens. It acknowledges that the nature of employment itself is changing.
And that fluidity leads us directly into point number 5, the massive shift away from traditional employment structures altogether. Let's talk about emerging workplace trends.
Yes, the gig economy and remote work. This is fundamentally altering how people structure their days.
We need some precise vocabulary here to navigate this. Gig economy, traction, and the concept of unconscious bias. Let's start with the gig economy.
Okay.
I like to use an analogy here. I view traditional salaried employment like being a soldier in a regular army.
How so?
Well, you have a commanding officer, you have a uniform, but you also get a barracks, food, and a hospital if you get hurt.
Yeah.
You have stability.
That's a strong visual.
But participating in the gig economy, driving for an app, doing project-by-project freelance design is like being a mercenary.
I see the comparison.
You have ultimate autonomy. You pick your missions. You can potentially earn more per mission. But if you get sick or if the algorithm changes and you stop getting missions, there is no army hospital to take care of you.
That perfectly captures the inherent risk. The big economy is defined as a labor market characterized by the prevalence of short-term contracts or freelance work as opposed to permanent jobs. Your mercenary analogy highlights the extreme volatility. A C1 description might be, while the gig economy offers unprecedented flexibility and autonomy, it structurally shifts the burden of risk, such as healthcare, retirement planning, and income volatility, entirely onto the individual worker.
It is a precarious way to live. But not all emerging trends are based on precariousness. Some are gaining serious traction as positive shifts.
Yes, let's define traction in a metaphorical sense. While it literally means the grip a tire has on the road in business and social trends, it refers to the extent to which an idea, product, or movement gains momentum, popularity, and acceptance.
For example, the 4-day work week. 5 years ago, it was a fringe idea. Today, it is gaining massive traction.
Exactly. You would say, following the publication of highly successful productivity data from early trials, the implementation of a 4-day workweek is gaining significant traction among progressive multinational corporations.
We saw this with the massive trials in Iceland. They took a wide variety of public sector workplaces, schools, hospitals, offices, and reduced the hours from 40 down to 35 or 36 for the exact same pay.
And the results?
They were overwhelmingly positive. Stress and burnout plummeted, while productivity either stayed exactly the same or actually improved. It proved that so much of this standard 40-hour week is just filler, just presenteeism.
It forces management to focus on output and competence rather than mere attendance. However, when we talk about modern corporate management, we have to address the disconnect between the progressive trends companies publicly celebrate and the hidden structures that actually dictate who succeeds.
You were talking about the illusion of meritocracy and the reality of unconscious bias.
Yes, unconscious bias is a highly critical term in modern human resources and organizational psychology.
Let's define it.
It refers to the underlying automatic social stereotypes or attitudes about certain groups of people that individuals form outside their own conscious awareness.
So it's not intentional racism or sexism, but it's still there.
Exactly. Everyone has them, shaped by their culture, media, and upbringing.
I want to push back on corporate culture here. Companies love to talk a big game about diversity and inclusion. They print it on brochures and have seminars.
They do. It's very popular PR.
But isn't it true that unconscious bias still heavily dictates who actually gets promoted to the top floor? It feels like we have adopted progressive new language, but we are maintaining the exact same old power structures.
It's a valid point.
If you have an anonymous gig economy platform, maybe bias is removed. But in a corporate office, if the leadership team all looks a certain way, unconscious bias ensures they continue to promote people who look and think exactly like them.
Your critique is highly valid and extensively documented. Stating you have an inclusive culture is a matter of marketing. But dismantling deeply ingrained unconscious biases requires structural, systemic change.
Do you have an example of that kind of change?
Sure. For instance, when orchestras began using blind auditions, having musicians play behind a screen so the judges couldn't see their gender or race, the percentage of women hired increased dramatically.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating.
That is a systemic intervention to bypass unconscious bias. Without structural changes, bias continues to thrive, regardless of how much traction inclusion initiatives claim to have.
And part of that systemic structure, the ultimate filter that determines who even gets their foot in the door, is our education system, which is a perfect pivot to point number 6, the building blocks of success. Let's analyze the age-old debate, formal educational degrees versus hands-on practical experience.
To navigate this debate elegantly, we need to master 4 specific terms: credential, prerequisite, vocational, and competence. Let's build the framework.
Start us off with credential. We hear this all the time. She has impressive credentials.
A credential is a qualification, achievement, or aspect of a person's background, typically documented, used to indicate their suitability for a specific role or level of authority.
Like a degree.
Yes, a university diploma is a credential. A professional license is a credential. In an academic argument, you might state, in highly regulated fields like medicine or civil engineering, a formal academic credential remains an absolute necessity.
Which leads directly to prerequisites.
Yes, a prerequisite is a thing that is required as a prior condition for something else to happen or exist. It is the gatekeeper.
For example,
Obtaining a bachelor's degree is a strict prerequisite for admission into the graduate program.
okay, so if degrees are prerequisites and credentials, what happens to the people who follow a different path? The vocational path or the path of raw competence?
Let's define those to contrast them. Vocational relates specifically to an occupation or employment. It is training directed at a particular trade and its specific skills, rather than broad theoretical knowledge.
Like trade school.
Yes. Plumbers, electricians, dental hygienists, these require rigorous vocational training.
And competence.
Competence is the proven ability to do something successfully, efficiently, and effectively. It is the practical application of skill.
How do we use it in a sentence?
You might note, while the candidate lacked a formal management credential, her demonstrated competence in leading cross-functional teams during crises made her the ideal choice for the promotion.
This brings us to the core debate. Is the traditional 4-year university degree just an overpriced signaling mechanism? Is it just a credential used by lazy hiring managers as a prerequisite to filter out resumes? Or does it actually guarantee competence?
That is the central controversy in modern education economics. For decades, the global consensus was that a university degree was the ultimate, unquestionable prerequisite for a lucrative career.
But that's changing, isn't it?
It is rapidly fracturing. It is widely argued now that hands-on competence can and often should outweigh formal credentials in many sectors, particularly in technology and entrepreneurship.
We always hear the Steve Jobs example.
Yeah.
It's almost a cliche at this point, but it's powerful.
It is frequently cited for a reason. Steve Jobs dropped out of college. He lacked the formal, socially approved academic credential. Yet he possessed extraordinary vision, an obsessive focus on design, and technical competence. He achieved unparalleled global success without the prerequisite paper.
Wait, let me challenge that. Steve Jobs is the ultimate anomaly. He was a generational genius. For the average listener trying to build a stable career, isn't relying on the Steve Jobs exception dangerous?
It can be.
If you are a hiring manager at a mid-level accounting firm staring at 500 resumes, you don't have time to assess the deep inner competence of every applicant. Isn't a university credential still the most realistic prerequisite you can use to narrow the pile down to 50?
You're outlining the exact defense of the credentialing system. It is an efficient filtering mechanism for employers. However, the system is breaking down under its own financial weight.
Because of student debt.
Exactly. Because the cost of traditional universities, particularly in the US and the UK, has skyrocketed, students are taking on crippling debt for a credential that no longer guarantees a lucrative return.
It's just not worth what it used to be.
And this economic reality is driving a massive resurgence in the value of vocational training and modern apprenticeships.
Look at the German apprenticeship model. It's brilliant.
It is widely considered the gold standard. In Germany, there is profound cultural and economic respect for vocational training.
How does it work?
Young professionals split their time between classroom learning and practical, paid, on-the-job training at companies. It prioritizes immediate, practical competence over purely theoretical knowledge.
So they don't go into debt.
They graduate without crushing debt, possessing highly specialized skills that the economy desperately needs, ensuring immense stability. It bypasses the credential inflation of the university system entirely.
That shift in valuing actual competence over an expensive piece of paper is a massive positive trend. But unfortunately, for point number 7, there is another deeply ingrained barrier to success that has absolutely nothing to do with your education or your competence.
Demographic inequality.
Exactly. Systemic demographic inequality. This is a critical area of professional discourse, particularly concerning gender equality in the workplace. The vocabulary required here demands precision and sensitivity.
Let's deeply analyze the terms: disparity, underrepresented, and mentorship.
Disparity is a word that carries a lot of weight. It doesn't just mean a difference, it usually implies an unfair or unjust difference.
Precisely. A disparity is a great difference, often rooted in systemic inequality. When discussing economics or sociology, you don't just say there is a gap, you use disparity to highlight the structural nature of the issue.
What's a good C1 example?
For example, despite decades of equal opportunity legislation, a significant wage disparity persists between male and female executives in the financial sector.
Which brings up the horrifying global statistic. It is a well-documented reality that, on average globally, women earn roughly 82 cents for every dollar men earn.
It's a stark reality.
That is a massive systemic disparity. But why? We can't just state the fact, we have to look at the mechanics behind it.
The mechanics are deeply intertwined with cultural expectations. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the wage disparity isn't just about a boss deciding to pay a woman less per hour for the exact same job, though that does happen.
Right, it's more complex.
It is largely driven by the motherhood penalty and the systemic burden of caregiving.
Let's unpack that.
In a vast majority of cultures, the societal expectation to care for young children and increasingly aging parents falls disproportionately on women.
And that impacts their career.
Drastically. It impacts their trajectory in several ways. They may need to take extended leave, creating gaps in their resumes that are penalized by hiring managers.
Yeah.
Furthermore, they may be structurally unable to put in the extreme, boundaryless overtime required in many lucrative, high-pressure fields because they have absolute caregiving deadlines at home.
So they are systematically filtered out of the highest-paying leadership tracks, which leads directly to our next word, underrepresented.
Yes. To be underrepresented means to be provided with insufficient or inadequate representation within a specific group relative to your numbers in the general population.
Give us an example sentence.
A C1 analysis would be, because the grueling culture of investment banking is incompatible with primary caregiving responsibilities, women remain severely underrepresented in senior partner roles.
So if the problem is systemic, organic change just isn't working fast enough. How do we fix this disparity?
This brings us to the debate between organic cultural evolution and top-down proactive policy. A frequently analyzed case study is Norway's approach to corporate leadership.
Oh, they implemented mandatory boardroom quotas, didn't they?
Yes, they did. In the early 2000s, Norway introduced a radical legal requirement. The boards of directors of all public limited companies had to comprise at least 40% of both men and women.
Wow, 40% minimum.
It wasn't a suggestion. It was a mandate with severe penalties for non-compliance, including the potential dissolution of the company.
That is the ultimate top-down intervention. Let's debate this because it's controversial. Opponents of quotas argue that it violates meritocracy.
That is the standard pushback.
They argue you should only hire the most competent person, regardless of gender, and that forcing a quota might mean promoting someone who isn't ready, which could ultimately hurt the company and the individual.
Right. However, the architects of the quota system argue that meritocracy is already an illusion due to the unconscious bias we discussed earlier.
Because men mentor men.
Exactly. Men naturally mentor and promote other men who look and act like them. The argument for quotas is that you cannot rely on organic, bottom-up change to dismantle centuries of entrenched systemic barriers.
So you force the change at the top.
By forcing diversity at the absolute highest level, the boardroom, you fundamentally alter the culture of the company.
Because if there are women on the board, they demand better policies for the entire company. And it also ties into our final vocabulary word for this section, mentorship.
Mentorship is the guidance, advice, and sponsorship provided by a mentor, an experienced person in a company or field.
Right.
The theory behind the quota is that by placing women in power, you create a robust network of mentorship for junior female employees.
How would you summarize that formally?
As 1C1 analysis notes, mandated representation at the executive level organically generates the vital mentorship networks required to pull underrepresented talent up the corporate ladder.
It's fascinating how a single legal policy can attempt to re-engineer human behavior and corporate culture. We've talked deeply about the microdynamics of the workplace education, bias, balance, motivation. But for our final theme, point number 8, I want to zoom out to a satellite view of the Earth.
Big picture.
Yes, I want to look at the massive physical movement of human populations in search of these elusive, lucrative careers.
We are transitioning to global employment trends and urbanization. This requires mastering language that describes massive demographic shifts.
What are our target words here?
Our C1 focus words are urbanization, infrastructure, migration, and the verb to hinder.
Let's lay the groundwork with migration.
Migration is the movement of people from one place to another with the intentions of settling, permanently or temporarily, at a new location.
And in this context, we mean economic migration.
Right. Economic migration is the primary driver. For example, the promise of lucrative employment in the tech sector has spurred massive internal migration from the rural Midwest to coastal tech hubs.
And when millions of people migrate to the same specific points on the map, you get urbanization.
Urbanization is the process by which large numbers of people become permanently concentrated in relatively small areas, forming cities. It is the population shift from rural to urban environments.
Give us a sentence for that.
Urbanization in Southeast Asia is completely transforming the demographic and economic landscape of the region.
But this creates a massive friction point, which brings us to infrastructure.
Infrastructure refers to the basic physical and organizational structures and facilities needed for the operation of a society or enterprise.
Like what?
This includes roads, bridges, water supply, electrical grids, and public transit.
And here is the vicious cycle. The promise of stable, lucrative jobs acts as a massive magnet, pulling millions of people into cities. This migration drives rapid urbanization.
Well, it's a double-edged sword.
It puts an apocalyptic strain on urban infrastructure. Housing prices explode because demand vastly outstrips supply. Traffic becomes unbearable, and public transit systems buckle under the weight of millions of daily commuters. The city becomes rich, but unlivable for the average worker.
It is a critical paradox of modern economics, and simultaneously, while the megacity chokes on its own growth, a completely different crisis unfolds in the countryside.
What happens there?
The migration of young, educated, and able-bodied workers to the cities leaves rural areas suffering from severe labor shortages and an aging population.
The classic brain drain.
Exactly. And this is where we introduce the verb hinder. To hinder means to create difficulties for someone or something, resulting in delay or obstruction.
How does that apply here?
The mass exodus of talent can severely hinder agricultural production, local businesses, and the overall survival of rural economies.
So you have megacities breaking under the pressure of too many people, and rural towns collapsing because they have too few. How do governments possibly balance this?
It requires immense proactive intervention. Look at major initiatives like India's rural development programs.
What do they do?
The strategic goal of these policies is to aggressively improve local infrastructure in villages, bringing in high-speed internet, reliable electricity, and modern agricultural technology.
So that you don't have to move to Mumbai or Delhi to find a lucrative career.
Precisely. By building up the rural economy and fostering local entrepreneurial opportunities, the government actively hopes to hinder the desperate migration to overcrowded cities.
That makes total sense.
The objective is to allow talent to thrive locally, achieving a balance between rural sustainability and urban growth.
It is a massive, incredibly complex feedback loop. The internal desire for a lucrative career drives human migration, which forces urbanization, which breaks infrastructure, which requires sweeping government policy. I mean, everything is just connected.
It is an intricate web, and understanding how to articulate these connections is the hallmark of true C1 English proficiency.
Well, listeners, we have covered a staggering amount of ground today. We synthesized 8 critical themes of the modern professional world. We debated the tension between the engine of intrinsic motivation and the fuel of lucrative pay.
We analyzed the psychological tightrope of choosing between autonomy and stability.
And the despair of a monotonous routine. We explored the burnout and fatigue of our always-on culture, the displacement caused by AI, the volatility of the gig economy mercenary.
As well as the shifting value of educational credentials versus true competence, the systemic disparities requiring mentorship, and the infrastructure-breaking reality of global urbanization.
Emphasizing to our listeners possessing this specific, highly nuanced C1 vocabulary. Understanding exactly how to wield words like prerequisite, unconscious bias, disparity, and displacement empowers you to discuss the future of work with profound confidence.
Absolutely. Whether you are writing a complex university essay, sitting for an advanced IELTS exam, or presenting a strategy in a corporate boardroom, these words give you intellectual authority.
And I want you to reflect deeply on that initial hook question I asked at the top of the show. Considering the rapid rise of AI displacing jobs, the massive shifts in urbanization, and our desperate attempts to set boundaries against an always-on culture, what will the ideal job look like in 30 years?
It's hard to even imagine.
Will the concept of a daily commute even exist? Will the 4-day work week be a standard legal entitlement globally?
It is a question that demands rigorous critical thinking and constant adaptability.
Now, as promised, there is a bonus at the end of our deep dive today. We have spent an hour dissecting single vocabulary words, but the ultimate secret to sounding like a natural native C1 speaker isn't just knowing big words.
No, it is mastering collocations.
Collocations.
Collocations are essential. These are specific groups of words that naturally and habitually go together in English. Using them correctly instantly elevates your fluency.
Give us an example.
For instance, a B1 learner might say, get a job, but a C1 professional naturally says, pursue a career.
Pursue a career. It sounds so much more intentional. And instead of saying, make things equal between work and life, a native speaker would say, achieve a balance.
Exactly. Achieve a balance. And instead of awkwardly saying, beat the problems in my way, you utilize the highly professional collocation, overcome obstacles.
Pursue a career, achieve a balance, overcome obstacles. Practice those combinations. And now for our audience interaction.
Earlier in our discussion, when we were analyzing the pursuit of lucrative jobs and the reality of external rewards, we brushed past a very common, highly illustrative English idiom.
All right.
The idiom is money talks.
So listeners, we want to hear from you. What does the idiom money talks actually mean? Think about our discussion on influence, lucrative careers, and power structures. Write your specific interpretations and answers in the comments section below.
It is a fantastic test of understanding how cultural idioms are deployed to explain harsh business realities.
And finally, mastering a language at this elite level takes intense consistency. It is a long journey. If you are truly dedicated to mastering your English flow and pushing toward that C1 level, write as I stay committed in the comment box right now.
Let us know you are on this journey with us and that you are putting in the work.
Exactly.
Committing to the daily process, upskilling your linguistic toolkit is the only reliable way to achieve that genuine competence.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this massive exploration. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support this daily English practice. Keep practicing, keep pushing your boundaries, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.